Hey guys, it's Klemmer review the fourth remorse. Hey guys, it's Klemmer review for the fourth most recent episodes of Legends of Tomorrow. Season 3, Episode 3, Zari, Season 3, Episode 4, Phone Home, Season 3, Episode 5, Return of the Mac, and Season 3, Episode 6, Helen Hunt. And as you guys know, I have really enjoyed this season for the most part. I think this has been a very solid start. Season 2, still in my opinion, is the stronger contender, but this season is definitely very close to Season 2. There's a lot of stuff I really do love here. And these 4 episodes all pretty much range from good to great. There isn't really a bad episode in there. There's one episode that I'm not the hugest fan of, but still was a very well done episode, and right now, at least, this is the strongest of the CW DC shows for sure. I really am enjoying this show for the most part, and the other ones have been a bit rocky so far. This one seems the most consistent, and that's something I've been very impressed by, but we're just going to jump into right now, starting off with Episode 3, which, while the first 2 episodes were pretty much one-offs, you know, the first one obviously introducing the major elements of the season, the second one being kind of a one-off, but also explaining Amaya's backstory. Episode 3 primarily really delves us deeper into the season. We meet this character, Zari, who's actually from 2042, and basically Zari is someone who, she's this prisoner basically, and the legends come in and they tell her to come with them if she wants to live, because it turns out that Zari basically, you know, Kuwasa is coming after Zari and they have to try to protect her, and basically Zari says that they'll lead Argus to them, and an Argus drone then flies in, and they're very hesitant on whether or not they want to actually help out Zari. They even think about possibly recruiting her to the team, but Sarah orders the others to surrender. Argus soldiers are moving in, and basically Zari gives them this proposition, because Zari doesn't realize that Kuwasa is actually watching, which again, guys, I have not watched Vixen yet, but Kuwasa is heavily prominent throughout these 4 episodes, and I really like what we see of her. But basically, Zari comes this proposition with them where, look, you know, if you want me to join your team, all you have to do is track down, you know, free my brother from prison, and then everything's going to be fine. But they eventually realize that they're actually being played, because there is actually no brother that is in prison. She actually has been tricking them this entire time. So this basically, you know, it's actually a heist, and she says the amulet was her brother's, and it's hers now, and she taps, and turns out she really just did this so she could get the amulet. And Amaya tells Nate really what's going on at this point, which we'll get to Nate in a little bit. Nate's stuff is definitely the highlight of this episode, but Zari wanders off, the prisoners are rushing in, they're separating her from the legends. There's this really cool scene where the totem fades out, she has a vision of the jungle, and basically from here, they're very hesitant on whether or not they really do want to help her, because clearly she's not on their side. And they get outside, they tell Zari to stop, she uses an amulet to turn into a sandstorm, she flies off, and you know, Ray goes after her. Jax is telling Gideon to take command of the ship, and the team runs as the prisoners then storm out. And eventually it gets to the point where they go to the site in the forest where a camp was before it was torn up, and Argus, you know, it turns out that you know, Zari believed that this was going to be their sanctuary, and she explains that her brother had powers, so he actually fought Argus, and the night that they were leaving, Argus raided their house and killed her brother and took the amulet. So this is clearly a very special spot to her, and she needs the amulet to protect her parents. And Kuwasa then arrives, Adam notifies Sarah that she's there, the team then heads out, and eventually what ends up happening is we get to a point where it seems like the team, you know, there's this unidentified ship that approaches Wave Rider, and Gideon identifies it as the Time Bureau, and Sarah realized that Gary told the Time Bureau where they are, which Gary's a character that I've honestly really enjoyed. It's just a lot of fun to watch, but he's someone who is extremely loyal to the Time Bureau, and he will rat them out, you know, even if it seems like they're not going to, he still rats them out. So we see that character of Ava, who honestly I really can't stand. I get it that she's not really on the Legend side, she doesn't feel like they're fit to run, but she's just such a one-note character, and there really is nothing to her other than the fact that she's just really there to create an obstacle for the team. That's really the only reason why Ava's there. because Ava says that they'll save him if the legends give them Adam's coordinates and fires a warning shot to make her point, and Sarah says she'll send the coordinates but flies off instead, and Ava's ordering her team to follow them, so Adam's firing a Kawasa, which dissolves into water, and basically Zari steps forward with the amulet. Kawasa releases Adam and asks if Zari can use the totem, and she offers Zari revenge on Argus, and Kawasa warns that Zari can't control the power, so she blasts Kawasa with the totem and tells Ray they have to go, and basically it seems like Zari is actually on their side here. So basically what does end up happening here is Ava contacts Sarah, says that Sarah could have destroyed them all, because basically there's this ship heading towards them, and Sarah decides that she's just going to collide the two ships into each other, and because she's not going to let the Bureau put Zari behind bars. You know, she can see the good in her. And at the end of the episode, they do end up recruiting Zari, which I did like seeing. But the other stuff in this episode is actually a lot of fun. It involves Nate, and basically, as we know, Amaya, you know, she's had a lot of visions of her ancestors, and she's doing what she can to try to protect them, but this causes Nate to take a placebo that actually is a very addictive drug, and he starts acting all weird because he's clearly high, and it's honestly hilarious to watch. This is stuff I really do love with Nick Zano. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch, but it wasn't just there just to be funny. It actually did have some substance to it, because eventually once he is cleared of the drug, which when he's on the drug, it was just hilarious to watch, just the little things that he was saying. But he talks to Amaya, and she thanks him for getting a handle on the totem. He wishes that she was staying on the ship, but figures she's leaving now that she can control the totem. And Amaya says she can't go because her fate is actually intertwined with Zari. Zari is a descendant of Amaya's, and she wants to protect her. And when she learns they're dropping Zari off in 2042, she heads off. So basically, like I said, the episode does end with them recruiting Zari, and we get to the ending here where we start where the next episode takes us in 1998. In 1988, where we see a young Ray is befriending a Dominator, and that is the way this episode ends. And let me just say right now, episode 4, Phone Home, is easily my favorite of the bunch. This episode was just a ton of fun, and it's everything I expect this show to be. You know, one of the things I love about Legends Tomorrow is how it doesn't take itself too seriously. And this episode, it pretty much embraces that concept fully, where it basically focuses on Ray. He is a young boy here, he's being bullied, and it's very much like E.T., where he's befriending this Dominator, and the two of them kind of start an unlikely bond. You know, they're watching Singing in the Rain, and, you know, they're nodding their heads to that and things like that. So this was just a lot of fun to watch, but obviously the Dominator is an anachronism, because Ray has no recollection of befriending this Dominator or any sort of, you know, memory of it, so they know very well that this didn't actually happen, is very much an anachronism. And throughout the episode, you also see that Zari is starting to get all on board. She doesn't understand a lot of what's going on. She doesn't know what E.T. is. She doesn't know what Singing in the Rain is. And that stuff, again, was just a lot of fun to watch. Stuff like that. I love the way the show embraces their pop culture nature like that. I think it honestly is a lot of fun to watch. So I thought that, like I said, was a lot of fun. Eventually, they do get to young Ray's house, and we realize that Ray didn't have the greatest childhood. His mother was very, you know, was nice to him, but she was also very concerned about him. It turns out, you know, Mrs. Palmer in general, Ray was kind of bullied as a kid, and Mrs. Palmer, you know, was kind of concerned about him. So I did like the way this dived a little bit deeper into Ray's childhood. I thought that was definitely very strong. But things get more complicated when Ray's mother actually ends up taking the form as a Dominator, and, you know, Nate is almost seduced by her. But luckily, they get out of that very quickly. Easily the best stuff in this episode, though, involves the Time Bureau, where they're about to subdue the Dominator. Again, not really understanding what they're about to get themselves into, not realizing that Dominator can control them, and the Dominator puts them under this, you know, powers where they actually start to imitate the Good Morning scene from Singing in the Rain, and that scene honestly had me dying. It was just so fun to watch, and that is the kind of stuff I just love watching on the show. I thought that was a lot of fun to see, and the episode does end with them subduing this Dominator Gumball. They do find a way to get Gumball out of there, and, you know, I did like the way that, in the end, they do actually end up helping young Ray. It's not like young Ray is completely unnoticed. They actually do end up helping him at the end of the episode. He dresses up for Halloween, and they all end up, you know, they basically, the bullies, you know, they get in front of the bullies, and they stop the bullies from bullying Ray. And I thought that was just a very well done scene where they tell him they're all his friends, and especially Mick telling the bullies to hand over their candy. Again, that's the stuff I love in this show. I love that kind of stuff. I think it was just a lot of fun to watch. But also going on this episode is we have Stein, and Stein is at a point in his life where he knows that Lily is pregnant, and Jax, you can see, is a little bit concerned because, sure, you know, he encouraged Stein to join them on the ship, but he's kind of taking the blame here because he knows that Stein wanted to see his granddaughter be born, and he wanted to see that all happen, so he does feel that he is keeping Stein from doing that, and, you know, Stein is saying, oh no, it's okay, but at the end of the episode, Jax actually wants to find a way to possibly break up Firestorm, so that way Firestorm can still be out there, but Martin can still have his whole life, and that is the way this episode ends. And like I said, this was just a really fun episode. It really embraced the fact that this show is just a lot of fun. It's not taking itself too seriously. That's one of the things I really did enjoy about this episode, and it was easily the strongest of the four for that very reason. So the third episode we're going to be talking about here, Return of the Mac, not at all a bad episode, just out of the four, this is easily the one that is the most problematic. There are definitely some things I think that happened a little bit too quickly here, and I think they really could have waited. We're just going to get into, most of this episode takes place in 1895 London, and basically the legends get note that there is a vampire roaming around Victorian London, and obviously they need to do something about that. But the other big thing about this episode is that Rip comes back, and basically he was this vampire hunter, and he deduces that the man was killed elsewhere. You know, he's investigating this murder, realizes that he needs to work with the legends, and for the most part, they're happy to see him, that he's now kind of returned. And I like the scene where they talked about how Rip in general, you know, how Rip in general, you know, he's now left his girlfriend and gone back to his ex-girlfriend, because in many ways it is that kind of scenario where he was with the Time Bureau and it seemed like he was going to work with them, but now he wants to work with the legends, and for the most part they are on board with him working there. So basically, they decide to, you know, just let Rip hang around. We get this really great scene where they're all trying to find the vampire, and they hear this cell phone go off. They think it's a cell phone. The song Return of the Mac plays, and it turns out it's actually a smartwatch, and there's this recurring gag throughout this episode that this song Return of the Mac does play here. Obviously, that's an anachronism as well. But the big thing about this episode is, you know, they get to the cemetery, and they spot a grave that's already dug up, but the body is actually gone, and it turns out the body turns out to be none other than Damien Darhk. Yes, this is how Damien Darhk has returned on the show. Sarah is very reluctant whether or not they should revive him, but Rip is adamant that maybe they could use him, and that maybe this could actually work out, and you know this isn't really going to work out. I didn't for a second think that Darhk was actually going to join the Legends, that this would actually work out. And for me, I knew he was going to return, but I did not think this is how it was going to work out. I thought he was going to be the big villain of this season, but no, it doesn't seem that way. Yes, he is definitely the villain moving forward. We see him in the next episode, and he's sort of the villain, but Mollis is going to be the big villain this season. We've already kind of built that up, so we know that Mollis is kind of going to be our big threat here. But this ends up going horribly wrong. You know, Darhk ends up killing a bunch of the people in Victorian London, and this gets really bad. Mollis actually ends up possessing this character, Eleanor, and greets Rip, and Rip says that they should meet face to face. Mollis says he's a god, and meeting would actually kill Rip. Also, they end up meeting Stein's ancestor, which, you know, at first Nate thinks that it is Stein, but it's not. It actually turns out to be his ancestor. I believe his name was Victor Stein, and, you know, they track him down, and they have to deal with that in this episode as well. And basically, it turns out the watch belongs to Darhk as well. We find out that's actually what's going on here. But the other big thing going on in this episode is, basically what ends up happening, like I said, this gets really bad. He telekinetically tosses away the agents and drinks wine. Eleanor's blasting the other agents with the totem, so it turns out really badly for everyone. It's just a complete disaster, and, Dark says it's time to go. He actually recruits Eleanor with him, and because of this, Sarah gives Rip a very stern talking to, where she points out that the agents are dead because of him. There's not going to be a next time, and she figures that Rip doesn't really trust anyone, and wonders because of that, how is she able to trust him, because she doesn't really know if he's on their side or not. So Ava and Ben arrive. He's detained from basically all the organizations, and to me it seems like this is the way that they're gonna write him off the show. He warns Sarah that there's a war coming and history needs her, so I do hope that this shows that he is going to be back. But for me, I did not think this needed to happen yet. I felt like they could have waited till maybe the mid-season finale, then you could have maybe gotten rid of him. But in general, I really was not feeling Rip leaving. I just thought it was way too quick the way that went down, and I do not think they needed to do that. If they were going to do that, I don't even understand why they brought him back, because they made it seem like he was going to be there if the Legends needed him once in a while, and here we saw that he's kind of incompetent, and, he doesn't really trust anyone, so I don't know where they're going with this character, because they have confirmed, at least from I know, Arthur Darville's not off of the show yet, so I don't know what this is really saying, if this means that Rip is gone, but I don't know. I thought this was extremely rushed, and I don't think they needed to necessarily do that. The other stuff going on here, I really enjoy. We see Jax and Stein. And Jax, as I said, he's trying to find a way to break up Firestorm. The first thing he realizes is that he's not craving grapefruit as much, and basically he's trying to get Stein to just kind of relax and focus on his family, focus on his granddaughter that's been born, and, Jax is telling that Stein can go home if they can stabilize the Firestorm matrix in his body, and Stein is asking when they start, so we end this episode in that way. But the other thing going on is between Zari and Amaya, which I really like this plotline. Zari, like I said, early on in the episode, we realized that she wants to do whatever she can to try to save her brother. She thinks that they can go back in time to do that, but Amaya makes it very clear that that's not what they do. They're not time travelers, they're just people that fix time, and that's something I think that separates the show from other time travel shows. They're not, people who are changing the time. They are putting it back to the way it was, so to speak. So, obviously, there aren't any ramifications or things like that. So basically, Zari, she's very adamant on doing that, but at one point she thinks about possibly sacrificing the totem, and Amaya lets her know, this is the one thing that keeps her brother there, and Zari's playing video games in the cargo hold. Amaya comes in, she sits down, and Zari says that she feels his presence when the totem came back to her, and Amaya says her ancestor says the totem's power grew as the threats they face are more powerful, and figures that this will get them to connect more, and I really did like seeing that. I like seeing these two actually connecting throughout this episode. So like I said, this wasn't a bad episode for me. I just thought some of the stuff towards the end was just a little bit rushed, and I don't really think they needed to necessarily bring Dark back, but I still thought this was a very solid episode altogether. And then the final episode we're going to be talking about is called Helen Hunt, and this was a really fun episode, because while this episode definitely is focused on anachronism, most of this episode focuses on Jax and Stein, who, like I said, in the events of them trying to separate Firestorm, actually end up going through a Freaky Friday source scenario where Jax is basically, Stein, and Stein is basically Jax. And that was a lot of fun to watch, but it also shows how great both Victor Garber and, the actor plays Jax, I always forget his name, but how good those two actors really are in their respective roles, because they have to do other, they have to play other characters in this episode, and they honestly do a really great job. Even though we know that Jax isn't really Stein, I must say, Franz Drameh did a really good job of kind of acting as if he was Stein. We see in this episode, we go to 1930s Hollywood, and Stein is obsessed with Hedy Lamarr and all these different actors, and it was just a lot of fun to watch there. And seeing Victor Garber acting like he was in his 20s was just hilarious, and I really did love seeing the role reversal here. It was a lot of fun, and again, they really did a lot of great stuff with that, so That's the kind of stuff I love seeing on the show. But the main plotline this episode involves Helen of Troy. She is in the 1930s, and obviously they need to make sure that they get her out of there. But Kuwasa, on the other hand, she's making things very complicated. We see that she is trying to recruit Helen, and, her and Zari are talking about what gods gave her powers, and Zari explains that Sarah's self-trained, the captain. Helen tells her it gives her hope that Zari comes from a time, and I really like the scenes between Zari and Helen with, Zari kind of telling Helen how much time has changed, and this is a big deal for Zari as well, because time has very much changed in the future for her. Things are not as they are in the present day, and I definitely did enjoy seeing that. Something as simple as in the last episode, with Zari discovering that they eat grapefruit and aren't forced to eat these specific foods. I definitely did enjoy seeing her. I thought that was definitely a lot of fun to watch. And, later in the episode, we see, basically what ends up happening is Kuwasa basically comes out and, once again, Dark ends up joining his daughter. Together they hold the nuclear energies. We see Jax is mentally assuring Stein that they got it, which Eleanor turns out to actually be Dark's daughter, which I thought was really interesting. We knew Dark obviously had a daughter, but this is his daughter, in the future, and basically somehow she's ended up there. So they teleport away once again. Dark gets away in this episode, and Jax and Stein go back to being the same. They realize they're back in their original bodies, and that Hedy Lamarr was actually right, that they were somehow going to get back, and Kuwasa insists she has every right to use both totems. She explains that Amaya gave the totem to her daughter, which was supposed to give it to her, and instead it is on Mari's throat, of course, that being Vixen, and Kuwasa is Amaya's granddaughter, we find out. Yeah, she actually is her granddaughter, and if she killed Amaya, then she would kill herself. So therefore, she can't kill Amaya, which I did like seeing this here. Before she can explain further, Helen then stabs Kuwasa in the back. She turns into water and then slips away. So basically, I'm guessing that Kuwasa, I don't think Kuwasa is dead now. I think there definitely is a way to bring her back. I don't know if she's actually dead. We'll just have to see the way that really does turn out. That was the one thing I wasn't okay with in this episode, is the fact that she just died like that. I didn't really feel all that satisfied. But the ending of this episode, we see they do, basically Ray finds Amaya, tells her that Gideon has placed Sarah into a coma so that she can heal. He then starts telling Amaya that Kuwasa is her granddaughter, and Amaya admits she already knows. Amaya figures that Ray was just protecting the timeline, says that the less she knows about her descendant, the better. She doesn't really want to know anything about Kuwasa moving forward. But I feel like this is far from over, and the episode ends with Zari. She takes Helen to this Amazonian warrior, which I don't know if they're trying to reference Wonder Woman, but because this is DC, I wouldn't be surprised if that's really what they're talking about, because they take her to Themyscira, which is an island of warrior women in the same time, and basically that is the way this episode ends. So, like I said, guys, all four of these episodes I definitely really did enjoy, but there definitely is some stuff I do want to talk about. First of all, let's just talk about the character of Zari, because I'm enjoying the inclusion of her overall. I think she's doing a really good job. And Tala Ashe, while she doesn't necessarily bring a huge sort of change to the show in the way that Nick Zano did, I am definitely really enjoying her. She's someone who is from the future. There's a lot of stuff that she isn't in the know about. There are things that the legends reference and that she doesn't know about, and they have to bring her up to speed. So I do like that element. I do like what they're doing with her overall, and I do think they're servicing her talents pretty well. So I am enjoying Tala Ashe here. I think she overall is doing a really good job. What's more intriguing to me is this idea of Kuwasa, because obviously we now know that Kuwasa is actually Amaya's daughter. I have no doubt that she definitely is going to come back. I think because of who Kuwasa is, I think they're definitely going to try to bring her back, but we'll have to see the way that really does turn out. But I like this sort of, revelation here, that not only is, it turns out that she actually is Amaya's daughter, but she can't kill Amaya, because if she does that, then she was never born. So basically, Amaya's kind of stuck here, where she doesn't want to know much about her, her descendants, and her descendants can't kill her. So I don't really know where this is going to go if Kuwasa does live. I'm just assuming she's going to live, but we'll have to see the way that really does turn out. I think that overall is going to be very interesting. Dark being back. Let's talk about this, because did they need to bring Dark back this season? No, I don't think it was necessary, but Neil McDonough is so great in this role that I can pretty much just watch him in anything, and he is fantastic. I do like that he has the daughter now. I don't know how long that's going to last, but I do like that his daughter is out there and that they keep getting away. So I'm looking forward to seeing really what that is all about. Sarah, as we know, is in a coma. She's going to be fine, but she's in a coma right now, so we'll have to see the way that really does turn out. As far as things are going with Stein and Jax, we knew this was inevitable. We knew definitely there was going to be some sort of storyline where they were going to find a way to write him out of the show. But the thing is, it's happening a little quicker than I expected, because if you guys don't know, they've already said that Victor Garber is going to be on for, you know, the entire season. So he's going to leave sometime at the end. Now that might have changed, you know, I don't know. The last I read of that was the season premiere. So that very well could have changed, and I don't know about that. But we'll just have to see the way that does play out. The last I heard, like I said, he was not going to be on, you know, he's going to be on the full season, but that very well could change, and maybe they're writing him out in the mid-season. I don't know. But either way, I like the way the storyline's done. I think, again, it really shows how much Jax has changed as a character. He really has come full circle in the sense where he now not only, you know, coerced Stein to joining him, but now he wants Stein to go back to his family. It just shows how selfless of a character Jax is. You know, he started off, he was a bit cocky, and now he's not, and I really do love seeing that here. I just love seeing how far this character has come, and that was something I definitely really did enjoy seeing. Like I said, what they did with Rip, I don't believe that Rip's gone forever, but just the fact that Rip was dismantled like that, I just didn't feel was the right direction to take him. Other than that, guys, I really enjoyed these 4 episodes, so now I'm going to rate each episode overall. So for Season 3, Episode 3, Zari, I am going to give that episode a B+, just a very solid introduction to the character overall. For Season 3, Episode 4, Phone Home, I will absolutely give that episode an A. Just the definition of a very fun, entertaining episode that also gave us some really good insight on Rey's childhood overall. For Season 3, Episode 5, Return to the Mac, I'm going to give that episode a B. Not at all a bad episode, just I did feel that there were things happening just a bit too quickly there. And for Season 3, Episode 6, Helen Hunt, I am going to give that episode a B+. And with that, guys, that's it. I've now reviewed all 4 episodes of Linus tomorrow. I do still have to review this week's, which I will definitely do very soon. Let me know what you guys thought of these episodes were all. Love your thoughts, and then we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.